right, Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back for a midweek, or I guess kind of beginning early week episode of In Case You Missed It. We are back, and we've got a special guest, Steve Ressler, who's kind of a blast from my past in government, but has really been a mover and shaker in the GovTech market. We're going to talk to him in the second part of our In Case You Missed It episode. But what we thought we'd start with, and what we know a lot of you are really interested in, is the GovTech 100 for 2021 has officially been released. So congratulations to all of the companies that have been recognized. And, you know, we know that there are so many companies that are in the market that are doing incredible work. And unfortunately, we can only recognize 100, but I think everyone really deserves some kudos for the work that was put in over the course of 2020. We saw amazing market activity. Everyone really stepped up over the course of the year and really helped government agencies do some incredible things. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what we saw. I know last time we talked a little bit about some of the data, but 2020, really as a year accelerated GovTech and the importance of GovTech in the market. This was something that was becoming mission critical for a lot of policymakers that were out there. And now this is, right in the crosshairs and the focus areas of a lot of elected officials, policymakers, and of course, the IT leaders across the country. GovTech is where it's at. Now, last year, the market didn't slow down at all because of the pandemic. We saw 6 GovTech acquisitions here in the United States, including the company that Steve was president of. Collier was acquired by Motorola Solutions. We saw Pondera acquired by Thomson Reuters, and WaterSmart Software from Vertex, and Nextdoor acquired Neighborland, and Granicus acquired Kaltera. CoFile acquired Seamless Doc. So a lot of activity happening in a year of chaos and uncertainty. And funding was also right there as well. We saw over $280 million raised by U.S. GovTech companies just over the course of last year alone. So incredible venture activity also happening in this year of chaos. So let's talk a little bit about 2021 and some of the key things that we saw here. Well, one, you'll definitely want to go to govtech.com/100 and check out the editorial. Ben and Andrew from our GovTech Biz team did a fantastic job kind of recapping the year that was and really diving in deep with 4 companies in the market and how 2020 impacted their operations. You can also check out the full GovTech 100 list at govtech.com/100 and browse all of the lists from previous years there as well. Now, for the 2021, some interesting data points here. The average number of founders in a GovTech 100 company for 2021 was 3. The average age of a GovTech 100 company for the 2021 cohort was 14 years old. The total amount of funding that was raised was over $3 billion in collective funding raised by just that 100 companies over their entire lifespan, so collective funding there. The number of unique investors across those 100 companies is 470. And this is something we're continuously seeing more investors and investment ecosystems playing in. And it's not just traditional venture capital, it's also private equity. We're seeing angels also play a very significant role here. So investment is definitely hot right now in the GovTech space. Number of acquisitions. So these 100 companies acquired 199 different companies over the course of their lifespan as well. So the M&A side of GovTech is also pretty hot and pretty incredible. So let's talk a little bit about some of the new companies for 2021. These are in alphabetical order. So you can see we've got a lot of new companies that have tackled a lot of really interesting challenges across the government space. So you'll want to go to govtech.com/100 and check out each of their profiles. We've got companies like Hayden AI that are doing really interesting things with hardware and software to do traffic enforcement. We've got CoFile, which acquired Seamless Docs, Open Cities, Open Lattice, some really great companies. Soma Global's on here, Spatial Data Logic, Simply Gov, Spider Tech, Springbrook Software, TrueRoll, Ubiquita, Urban Footprint, Vera Mobility, Vertex One, Yline, and ZenCity. So really an interesting sampling of companies from around the world. We also saw for the first time international companies broke into the GovTech 100 list because, as we've seen in 2020, there is no border now in the GovTech space. And so we're seeing some really interesting dynamics there with companies internationally that are doing great work here in the US market. So congratulations to all of those companies. So some of the key kind of trends that stood out as we curated this list this year. Number one, all of these companies help adapt it to and adjust to pandemic response for government. So they really looked at ways to help government agencies respond to the pandemic of 2020, but they also had to adjust and make their own operations something that could be done virtually, remotely. So a lot of things there. They were all really focused on solving complex and really mission critical challenges in government. And this is really exciting to see because it's like every year we see more and more complex problems in the public sector that are solved by these companies. All of them were leveraging emerging technologies. We saw a lot of new uses of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other things. And then an increasing international footprint, not just by where they're based, but also their expansion. We've seen a lot of expansions into Canada, into South America, into overseas markets as well. So GovTech is definitely a global dynamic. And so make sure you check out the full list of companies at govtech.com/100 and dive into all of that. And then we'll be releasing a ton of new market data at our Beyond the Beltway event on February 25th and 26th. So you can register for that at govtech.com/events. So now I want to kind of get into the second part of this and bring in a friend and a longtime collaborator on all things GovTech, and that is Steve Ressler. Steve, thanks so much for carving some time out to join us.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to join you and Joe.
Great. Well, it's like we've been talking about having you on for some time, so it's great to actually be able to interview you on this. So let's start first with your own personal story. So I was kind of browsing Twitter in preparation for this, and one kind of line that you put out that caught my attention is that you reinvented your career 6 times, and we all know that you've successfully exited 3 companies in the process. But tell us a little bit about your journey in GovTech.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I think being here on the GovTech 100, for me, it's like the Oscars nominations or the winners. So to be here on the big day is exciting. It's been amazing to see what you and Joe built. Yeah, my career. So I'm actually from a family of government employees, so 3rd generation government employee. My mom's side was all entrepreneurs. My dad's side was all government employees. I kind of joked on Twitter. I've had 6 careers. And kind of so far. And really, I started out really, my passion in school and college was sociology. Actually was like a TA in undergrad, joined a PhD program in University of Pennsylvania right away under a government scholarship. I realized I did not want to be a professor. My wife's a professor. So I realized I actually wanted to go and serve. So I ended up working in government. Kind of the second act, there's not many people in young people in government. In federal government, there's more technologists over 60 than under 30 is one example stat often used. So I created a group called Young Government Leaders that became a national nonprofit, and often was the token young person who was asked, what do young people think about working for government? And that was fun, but I was worried a little bit about being pigeonholed there. And I ended up launching a company called GovLoop, which was an online community for government employees, and was joined as founded as a social network. All the emails came from me and were signed Mr. GovLoop, and always talking about keeping things awesome. That's where I met Dustin, and that was a great journey. Awesome. The Daily Awesome was the email. We got acquired by GovDelivery, which is a SaaS company in GovTech. And that was my first experience kind of being on the private equity and exec side. So I was the chief marketing officer for GovDelivery on its growth and then exit to Vista. So I learned all about our marketers on the call. I learned about MQLs and SQLs. I managed our BDR inside sales team. So I never thought I'd do that working for government, but it was a ton of fun. And then I joined a friend, Chris Bennett, who had founded Callio a couple years ago. And it was fun to join him where he was the founder and I was like the suit coming in, is what I joked online. So I was now I guess I'd become a GovTech exec and helped him build a really amazing, wonderful business, but more importantly, great impact on the community and citizens. And as mentioned earlier, we sold that to Motorola earlier this year. And then kind of one act I'm working on now is I got really interested in investing. So I've been quite active investing both in GovTech companies. I've been involved in companies, nonprofit SaaS like Interfolio that exited, and Vendor Registry, which exited this year in GovTech, and small investor in Granicus, and some of the new ones like TrueRoll I'm an investor in. So I've been really interested in investing in companies in both GovTech, but also in this kind of self-funded search space where people are buying existing businesses. So always trying to reinvent myself and just keep up with you, Dustin, with all your innovations you do every year.
That's awesome. And thanks for sharing that. And Dustin's right. I think you've been kind of really sharing a lot of that journey on Twitter for a lot of people to kind of follow in your footsteps or at least be inspired. Coming back to that GovTech space, when you looked at this year's list, any notable companies catch your attention?
Yeah, I kind of like there's two legs that's on the new. Some where I think kind of been around a while, but are new to the list that I like a lot. GWorks was one that was new for me this year that I had met Joseph actually through the search community, and just a great company in Omaha, Nebraska. I love these like no offense, middle of nowhere companies. My mom's born in Omaha that are doing great business. So I love Co-File. I think would be in that. They've been around for a while, but first time on the list. I like some of the newer technologies. I mentioned being involved with TrueRoll. Awesome business using a couple folks from Socrata, using that data thinking to create a product for the Homestead Act to help governments find where there's money to be on the revenue side. So really like them. And then you picked a number of great ones from the public safety space that I've been involved in. Love the folks at Spider Tech doing really interesting work. Soma Global, so a great list. And then the last but not least, I like the international you added this year. So stuff like Open Cities. I think they're originally from Australia. I think they're now in San Francisco. But cool to see GovTech go international and being honored on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've really proven that GovTech is a market that you can have an impact in and a reasonable return from an investment standpoint. And so, for those in the investment community that are listening in, that are, thinking about whether this market is for them, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so I mean, you have plenty. I love your the Beltway stats. I mean, just the size of government's huge, right? Both in state, local, and I do federal as well. Just whatever percentage it is of the GDP, it's 20% or something. There's so many sub verticals of government. The beauty of government is kind of it can be hard to get in, but once you're in, it can be quite sticky and recurring if you're serving the clients well. I think this is really important with all the acquisition activity. We need to put government first and truly serve them. So it's a great market once you're in, if you're doing a good job. Everyone talks to each other, right? The city will talk to the county and the counties will talk to each other at the state conference. So there's a real good compounding effect over time. So it's hard to go from a venture, 0 to 100 million in 5 years, but great work compounds. And that's what I think makes it a great market. It's a very resilient market as well. So it's been awesome to see the amount of new investors in the space over the last decade.
So that brings us to another question. And a common question that we get from the startup community is, how should they be approaching the potential for raising capital? Any advice that you'd give them to navigate these different options?
Yeah, so I always encourage folks, I think in GovTech, you want to get going, but you don't want to raise too much money. I think as you've seen in this market, there's a lot of acquisitions. I think you said 200 acquisitions. So there's a lot of doubles and triples out there. I think the amount of companies that have gone public though is limited. So most folks, if they raise, $50, $100 million plus, the goal is to go public, and that can be harder to do. So I always encourage folks to be smart with the capital raise, get enough to get going, right? But also don't raise too much that you still have options on the table as the company grows. There's also a lot of unique ways to do it. So often in government, if you do annual contracts, they'll pay up front. So use customer funding. There's grant programs. There's at the federal level, there's the National Science Foundation has the SBIR program. There's groups like AFWorks. So in this market, there are also kind of interesting government funded opportunities to help you get going. So I think the real key is raise enough capital that you can get those first 10 customers and start to let that compound. And then as you grow, be smart. And then last but not least, there's in SaaS, if you're a SaaS provider, there's also a lot of new growth equity options as well as revenue financing options. So I just saw one, pipe.com, that'll turn your monthly recurring into an annual and pay you up front. There's other revenue finance options like SaaS Capital and Ladder Capital. So I think it's being smart with your capital stack so you don't get in a situation where you've raised too much money.
Absolutely, and our audience definitely agrees with you as well on that too. So we're going to be diving into that more over the course of the year and really looking at bringing experts like Steve on to kind of help GovTech companies understand how to approach this. So some exciting things ahead there. So Steve, for those in the public sector, what's their role in all of this? I mean, we've talked about the market, we talked about the investment community, the startups themselves, the big companies that are in the space, but what about those that are kind of sitting in the city halls and in the state capitals? What's their role in kind of helping accelerate momentum in this space?
Yeah, and that's where I come from. Like, I was a civil servant. I was never a political appointee. I spent 5 years just in the trenches. I was an IT specialist in Homeland Security, buying, procuring technology, and I always kind of think from that lens. I think the key is staying on top of what's possible. I think sometimes when you're in government, you only know the tools you have, and it's amazing just the possibility that exists with modern technology and just everyday things you see that's coming out there, either with data like a true role or just the ability you can do with different things. So staying abreast of it, the technology, I think, is a very key item. I think I think government employees are great at this, on diligencing new technologies. So, finding ways to do small pilot tests, but don't and see if it lives up to the hype, right? So I think with any new technology, I think it's nice to have a little bit of innovation and wanting to try new things, but a little bit of skepticism and make sure it works. So as you're approaching new technologies, do that with both lens. Talk to your neighboring cities and counties of what's working, and then don't be afraid to do something. My dad's favorite line was, "There's a risk in not taking a risk." Does that make sense? And I think there's a risk of not taking a risk and staying on the same legacy technology. And so you have to move forward, as we've seen during the COVID and this pandemic, that when you don't make change, you're stuck behind an 8-ball when things evolve.
I want to stick with that pandemic. When we look at 2020, it was quite a year. It was hard to anticipate everything. What did you make of what you saw in the GovTech market this year?
It was awesome. It was cool to see just the evolution, just things you see. I follow some publicly traded stocks, so you'll see a lot of reports there. But Twilio being able to set up contact centers on the fly, so I think the city of Pittsburgh and places just on the fly when everyone's done remote. You've seen a lot more folks moving, forms and processes online. So I think you mentioned Seamless Docs. There's a lot of providers there, Granicus, others, where digital transformation, they've turned those in person, filing a paper process, they move it all digitally. And so it's been amazing to see how fast that's been evolving. And then obviously we're on some version of a video conference. So just seeing that technology just fly, and whether it's virtual courts, I think there's been some really interesting things in the virtual court space, but any virtual meeting has kind of moved online, or in-person meetings moved online. It's been interesting to see the technology to do that. And it's exciting to see what happens in 2021. Hopefully we'll get vaccinated and the world will get back to normal. But I think some of those things still make a ton of sense just in modern life, that we'd rather do it in a virtual capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of 2021, kind of what's on your radar for the year? What are the problems that you see in the public sector that still need to be solved, or kind of the white space opportunities that startups should look at tackling?
Yeah, so one, I'd be curious your takes too. I'm really interested in the government kind of revenue space. Obviously, we're looking at how state and local budgets evolve. I think there's interesting companies, in like host compliance that helps collect revenue related to Airbnb compliance. There's some competitors in that space. I think anything that technology that helps governments capture more revenue that they already deserve, but maybe aren't capturing, a super interesting upside. I think there's just a lot you can do with data and technology to optimize that. So that's one space I really like. I'm really interested in kind of the lower middle part of the market. So sometimes I know you have listeners probably from the biggest cities to the smallest cities, and I feel sometimes the small cities and counties are ignored and get the technology last. So I see some companies starting at the lower kind of SMB part of GovTech. So I think one company, the bottom on your list, City Grows, I think focuses, has a lot of customers on the low end. I think bringing these great modern technologies to the SMB is interesting, where maybe 10 years ago, awesome technology was really only sold to the top 100 cities and counties. And now with cloud and modern SaaS, it can serve the whole, 30,000 plus cities and counties that exist.
No, you're right. I think that opportunity for revenue optimization is going to be a big focus. We saw that last go around during the previous recession, right? That we really saw kind of this new generation of financial analytics and other things come to root in government. So this may be another opportunity for that. So where can our audience connect with you and learn more about your work and what you got going on?
Yeah, and I love talking to folks, I love this market. It's my passion, and it's where I'll always be. So you can send me an email. It's just sressler@gmail.com. I'm at Twitter / Steve Ressler. SteveRessler.com is my or connect with me on LinkedIn. So happy to help, whether it's a government employee who's just looking how to access new technology and wants to pick my brain, or a new startup, or looking for investment. I invest in the space, so I would love to talk to anyone. And thanks to you, Dustin and Joe, for putting this together. I think it's been huge for the market. And it's amazing to see what I remember when Dustin and Joe had the idea, just in the glimmer of the hat, and now we're whatever, 6 years in. You know more than I, but it's impressive to see what's been built. And congrats to all the companies too. It's entrepreneurship's never easy, so it's to get to the top 100 is very meaningful. And then the same for the employees serving. So thank you for the government employees for your service. It's not the most glorious job, but the work you do matters.
Well, Steve, thank you for taking time out of your day to share your insight with us and your expertise. We greatly appreciate it. Don't forget, again, to check out the GovTech 100 list on govtech.com. Thanks, and join us next week for another episode as we look at the GovTech market and what's happening this year. Take care.
Thanks.